Hello, Dumelang Sambonani. A very warm welcome to your number one youth current affairs show. Of course, Kibalalaga Expressions. This is definitely the place for you to air your views. I'm your host, Jacqueline Mapala. We are commemorating and observing International Day of the Girl Child here on the show. And of course, it's a day that actually puts a spotlight on the girl child. And, you know, on the 10th, or at least on the 11th of October of every single year, it's a day that is marked by the UN as a time where we look at some of the challenges that girl children are facing in society and the world over. And the very important question that we're asking you on the show today is this: how does celebrating and commemorating a day such as the International Day of the Girl Child actually translate to real change for girls who are on the ground? That's the important question that we are asking you today. Of course, make sure you engage with us on our social media platforms. I want to hear from you. What are you saying on Facebook? What are you saying on Instagram? What are you saying on Twitter? Because your voice definitely matters, especially if you are a girl child. But before we get into this very important conversation, we hit the ground to find out what you have to say about this important issue. And this is what went down.
Who run the world? Girls. Hello, Expressions. The 11th of October is declared as the International Day of the Girl Child. We are in the streets of Braamfontein. Kwaye wena Mntomtsha, sifuna ukuxovula nawe le ngxoxo yanamhlanje. Siyabuza, do you think celebrating intsuku ezifana no International Day of the Girl Child bring about change to the challenges that young girls are facing? Masive Kuni.
I'm from a rural background, and we don't have a lot of access to opportunities, to a lot of industries, to opportunities to different industries. A lot of things, they take time to get to us.
A woman, a young girl to be particular, are still being subjected to leave school. They're still being subjected not to to find expression in amongst their families. So I think in our rural areas, we're not doing enough to make sure that women find their voices for wherever they are from.
That's always the case. Wherever you go, a man will always be a man. It even makes us be afraid to shine and express ourselves, because that's who you're supposed to be, a woman who's supposed to just cook, who's supposed to just clean. That's what society has placed us to be.
They're actually trying, but then we cannot put all the responsibilities on all those organizations. Also, as us girls, we should put on protective measures, be able to spot on suspicious acts, be able to say no, because no is the most important thing that you can ever say in your life.
Girls are always the victims. Girls, majority of these crimes are against women and children.
Andiboni ngathi ukhona into eyenzekayo ebambekayo. Ewe bayenza ngolo hlobo, kodwa kusekukhulu esisajongene nako, and kusekuninzi esikujongile esifuna amaphondo angenelele sizokwazi ukuncedakala kwezi zinto ezenzekayo mhla nezolo kweli lizwe lethu.
So those were some of the interesting comments from young people on the ground, and it seems to be very divided sentiment around the importance of investing in the girl child. But of course, I'm not having this conversation by myself. I'm joined by my lovely and extremely phenomenal panelists. Ladies, a very warm welcome to Expressions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sis, it's like power girls, like black gold magic. Yeah. And of course, it's important to ensure that we incorporate the voices of young people on the ground. Hello, audience. Ala. Dr. Vati, maybe let me start with you. I mean, you are a highly accomplished, celebrated academic professional. How does commemorating a day such as International Day of the Girl Child actually translate into a real change, especially in very male-dominated spaces?
Well, thank you so much, Jackie. Let me start by saying it is commendable that we are commemorating this particular day. However, having said that, translating, the efforts into tangible gains is still a long way to go. We are seeing currently in our country, in particular, if I can zoom into South Africa, only 20% of our non-executive board members are women. Whilst we are having above 50%, about 53% of our population in the country is constituted of women. So it means there's still a lot of work that needs to be done at the executive level as well, not only at the non-executive directors level, but even at the executive level, we are still seeing lower percentages. So it means there's way much more that we still need to do. And that which we need to do does not necessarily require us to be waiting for government or to wait for someone else to come with a solution. Those of us who are already sitting in these spaces, we need to make sure that we do our part. I always ask a question of, if you are sitting as a non-executive board member, and there's only 3 of you out of 15, as in the case in many of the boards that I sit in, you find that the percentages are lower, as I've just mentioned. But how many young people are you mentoring out there?
And maybe let me bring Karabo into this because she is part of the board. I mean, you are an executive deputy chairperson of the NYDA, and that's such an important organization for young people. You're female, you're black, you're young. And I think for you, what I want to find out from you, because the theme, according to UNICEF, is our time is now, our rights and our future. Is it really our time? Does the slogan actually hold true to the girl-child experience of a South African young girl in this country?
I want to believe that definitely our time is now. There is no time like the present. But as you would have, highlighted, does it really translate into real change on the ground? And I would like to believe no. There's so much that needs to be done. There needs to be uninterrupted attention given to the girl child. I mean, when you're thinking about how girl children are unable to access education because they don't have access to sanitary wear, that says to us what change is there that needs to be done. I think one of the worst things that we have done as a society is that we've started to sanitize social ills to appear as more, accommodative. For example, when you speak about teenage pregnancy, is it not statutory rape? Why are we excited that a 13-year-old is pregnant? Why are the police not, jumping up and down and saying something needs to be done? So I definitely believe that the time is now, and there needs to be that uninterrupted attention that is given to ensure that the material conditions of the girl child actually changes.
And I really love the point that Karabo is making around the uninterrupted intervention when it comes to the girl child. You're on the ground. I mean, you call yourself a village girl coming from a rural area, but I mean, your work obviously entails, around working with school learners from rural and township areas. You teach them how to read and write, and you use, the spelling bee competition to be able to reach out to them. Now, there's assertions in our society to say, but you're spending so much time on the girl child. What about the boys? Do you feel that there's a neglect on the boy child? Is there competition between boy children and girl children?
First of all, the girl child faces unique challenges that I think the boy child would not necessarily experience. And I always like to bring statistics that will help us to unpack your question, if you can allow me. A number of issues that the girl child face. For example, you hear stats like 96 million girls are currently illiterate compared to 57 million boys. You hear statistics currently in the city of Tshwane. There's a big dilemma where young girls that fall pregnant between 2019 to 2021, 10,000 of them are between the ages of 10 and 15. So these statistics says that girls are facing unique challenges. And because of those unique challenges, it means we need to give efforts to the girl child. Not necessarily that by giving effort to the girl child, you are neglecting the boy child. These two are important because we want a society with well-rounded boy child and a girl child. However, it does not mean that they do not face the same challenges. So that's why I believe that it is important, particularly on this day, to give attention to the girl child because of this number of unique challenges that they're facing that the boy child will not necessarily experience.
And, ladies will obviously continue a little bit later to say, what are the solutions moving forward? Because we do really want to see a change in the lives of girl children across the board in our society, in South Africa and the world over. We'll be back right after this. You're watching your number one youth current affairs show, Expressions. Welcome back. You're still watching your number one youth current affairs show, of course, Gibalalaga Expressions. Today, we are commemorating the International Day of the Girl Child, which is obviously a day that is observed on the 11th of October. And it's a very important day because the theme that they have in terms of United Nations and UNICEF is to say this is the time that young women, or at least the girl child, basically get to own. Now, I'm going to be engaging with our audience. Hello, audience. Hi. Elona Kochai, don't feel left out in this conversation. Please don't forget to engage with us on our social media platforms. Riko Facebook, Riko Instagram. Let us know, what do you think? As a girl child, do you really feel empowered, or do you feel that your rights are actually protected? But I think, audience, let's get to the first question. I just want to find out, do you think celebrating days like International Day of the Girl Child, I mean, it's such a nice sort of like a word for commemorating a day, but does it translate for you as young people on the ground, to real change? Please go ahead. A gentleman, I love it.
Evening, everyone. I think to the question of whether or not it translates into something of actual importance on the ground, it's a good question to ask. I'd like to say, firstly, the idea of celebrating such a day, it is quite important, because whatever little change that we can do in raising awareness might deter a potential perpetrator or someone who'll subject women to, toxic masculinity or any social constructs that are actually harming or holding women back. But why it does not translate into something of practical value, something that we can actually see or observe in society, is because there's certain things that as people that we are not aware of, right? I've completely lost the plot now, and we might need to shoot this again. I'm sorry. Need to restart.
No, you can't just cut yourself, guys.
Okay.
Guys, I know this is like a pre-record. You can't just cut yourself. If you lose your train of thought, just say rather or continue, whatever.
Okay, cool.
Brasanza, how do we do that? Yeah, okay, we can straight to him. Okay, cool. Yeah. How does it translate to real change? Guys, if you make a mistake, pretend that it's live. So you'll just say, like I was saying, just continue, please, ne? Okay. We're treating it as live.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'm a little bit of a perfectionist, so please forgive me, everyone.
Okay. Okay, we'll start from him.
Okay, cool.
Okay, who's going to count him down?
Give him a count. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, cool. All right, so to the question of whether or not this celebration of this important day actually translates into something that we can actually observe, a change that we can observe, it's a very important question. I'd like to start by saying that celebrating the day in itself is something that is important because it raises awareness that helps deter a potential perpetrator out there who will subject women to, things that we are actually suffering from. Women being not being in certain positions at work just because they are a female. People that are perpetrators of rape, gender-based violence, and all of these cases, right? So the awareness of it is quite important in that. Even though it does that awareness, it brings that awareness to people, it still doesn't translate into something that is very huge, because we still have women that are being raped, killed, subjected to unfair treatment in their places of work and stuff like that, right? So I think that's what I think about it. It doesn't translate into something of value, because there's people in society that are well aware of certain things that they subject women to, but they still don't care. A lot of people know that raping is wrong, right? But they still don't care. They still go ahead and do it. Yes. So perhaps maybe there's something that we can do in that regard to sort of control, men, the perpetrators at the bottom, right? So perhaps, let's say, we raise or we make the punishment quite heavy so that it deters other potential rapists, other people that are potential problem causers in our workspaces by subjecting women to unfair treatments.
So maybe let me bring in, and I think thank you so very much for that wonderful comment. In
in as much as society is not placing so much value on a child, I do not understand how people do not see the power of a woman, the power of a mother who is empowered. Because when a girl grows up to have access to education, she becomes an empowered mother who then grooms children that gets to be educated, and everyone benefits, society benefits, economies grow, and we get to have a better world. So I think in as much as all over the world currently the life of a girl child is still under threat, it's not valued. We have girls in the Eastern Cape that are pregnant at 9. We have girls in Afghanistan that are denied education right now. There isn't value placed on a girl child. But all of us have a role to play in ensuring that we protect a girl child, because their lives are
Absolutely.
at threat.
Absolutely,
Thank you.
sure. I mean, I couldn't have said that any better. I think it's important for society to really understand that by investing and protecting the girl child, it's not a favor. It's important because it adds value to society as a whole. It's almost like working with one hand. Every single time you don't invest in a girl child, it means that instead of having both hands making a difference, you only have one hand to work with. So it's something that maybe you can think about, but we continue after the break with this very important conversation around the International Day of the Girl Child. You're watching Expressions. Welcome back. You're still watching Expressions. We are putting a very important spotlight on the International Day of the Girl Child, which is, at least was commemorated on the 11th of October. And of course, the poll question that we want you to engage with us on our social media platforms is simply this: how does celebrating or commemorating the Girl Child Day specifically translate to real change for the girl child on the ground in our society? Ladies, I mean, we heard a lot of the comments that were coming from young people or at least young people here with us, and we need to have some takeaways, some solutions, and I think maybe Dr. Vati, maybe let me start with you as we look at just some of these closing comments. I mean, what is the role of the intergenerational empowerment, young and old, and women working together in unity to fight some of these obstacles that they're facing?
Thank you so much, Jackie, for that question. Let me tap into the wisdom that was shared by one of the guys in the audience, who said, it really starts where you are, in that community where you stay. So we have a tendency of thinking that the solutions will be coming from a very big policy document. Yes, it's good that we look after the country's direction in terms of the policies, but starting with you as a mother at home, how are you, not only to your children, how are you grooming a girl child who is going to grow up one day and having to contest and to negotiate a salary? We are facing a challenge in nowadays of even the salary discrepancies between men and women. The statistics is standing at 77%, men earning about 77%, and this lesser by about 23% for women, And so your role as a mother, as an aunt, as a big sister, it starts there. So maybe, as much as we are really rallying behind these big interventions, we talk about campaign A, campaign X, but what about what you can do in your little corner? In that community where you stay, how are you making a change? How are you mobilizing and ensuring that young people are getting the knowledge that they deserve? If you are serving on boards, what knowledge are you sharing with others? If you are an executive at work, what knowledge are you passing on to your very own children? So we have a tendency of being the outside successes and the private failures in our very own spaces. So it needs to start to change there. With your executive assistant at work, how are you relating with him or her?
Yeah.
So if it's a she, you are having an advantage there of ensuring then that you are passing on all these problems that we are facing with, so that they can get the promotions and go up the ladder.
So mentorship is incredibly important, and I think for you, Karabo, I think we want to just simplify this. How do we overcome? I mean, You sit in a very important position in the NYDA. How do we overcome some of the plights that the girl child is facing, especially in rural areas and township spaces?
I think I want to build on the question of socialization. How we're socialized as the girl child is extremely problematic and therefore impedes on some of the interventions that we want to put in place. I mean, we're speaking about something as simple as access to sanitary ware. That extends into access to education, because if I can't have access to it, it means that I miss school and eventually I'm going to drop out. But even in the household, I mean, our parents give us an overburden of domestic responsibility. When I get back home, I must cook, I must clean, I must do this, I must do that chore, while my male counterpart doesn't. So it's important that we start with the simple things. It's not always as difficult as we want to make it appear. Let's create conducive environments for the girl child to access education. Let's create conducive environment for the girl child to grow up in a community that is free of violence, that is free of rape culture. I mean, those things are very important, and I think one of the guests mentioned it, that actually it starts with us, it starts in our communities, it starts in our homes.
And with that, Marcia, way forward, how do we bring real change to the girl child on the ground?
People often ask the question, is society convinced about taking care of the girl child? I always say society does not need to be convinced. This girl child belongs to a family. The family belongs to a community. The community belongs to society. So there's no need to convince society to rally behind protecting the rights for the girl child. What we need to do is to empower that society, that community, so that they take active role in promoting and advancing the rights for the girl child. How do we do that? If a pastor is accused of sexually assaulting a young girl at church, what is the role of the church and the congregation in protecting the girl child? What are the conversations families are having about the rights of the girl child over dinner? You know, what is the role of society in terms of protecting the girl child in general? So I think I just want to support my colleagues here to say that it really is an everyday life activity. It does not necessarily mean we need a formalized institution, an advocacy group. If you can do that, that's great. We need that also to support the conversation. But I think what we need to look into is society taking active role. Absolutely. And that needs to happen collectively.
Absolutely. Marcia, Karabo, Dr. V, thank you so very much for being part of this conversation. And I think the very important takeaway is that it shouldn't be just one day in the year. This is something that we need to embody. Young women, young girls, older generation should understand that it's important for us to basically be able to reshape and redefine the spaces that they're in. And it starts here, where you are. The little space that you occupy. It doesn't have to be a big thing, but a big thank you. And of course, my audience, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Obviously, we've come to the end of today's show, and I thank you so very much for tuning in, and I hope you have your own takeaways, especially as a young person, but most importantly, as a girl child. You need to understand that you're valuable, you are important in the society, and you deserve to be invested in. And of course, we are going to sign out with a powerful performance from Usuwile, and the song is called Ijezi. Take it away. Adios, muchachos.
Moya uvumi ngabe ndimkile kodwa moya uvumi nompilo tikape mama yolandi chezendini nompilo tikape mama yolandi chezendini unitanda kanjani wena ungafuni solandi chezendini unitanda kanjani wena ungafuni solandi chezendini nompilo ndikape mama yolandi chezendini nompilo ndikape mama yolandi chezendini unitanda kanjani wena ungafuni solandi chezendini unitanda kanjani wena